Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast live stream. It is a Chicago Bears Monday, a blowout loss in Tinseltown yesterday against the LA Chargers. With me, as always, is from the YouTube's The Windy City Production channel, the owner and the host, Rishab Shakiri. How you doing, Rishab?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Well, I last night's loss really took a lot of wind out of the momentum, or at least whatever the hell they had. That they just doesn't seem to be able to add up. And we're going to be spending next an hour or so to discuss about this. So let's talk about yesterday's game. It was a 30-13 loss to the LA Chargers. And from the very first drive, Velus Jones took out 3 yards from the end zone and then just getting corralled before even reaching the 25 yards. And from the very first play, Tyson Bagent threw a very beautiful deep ball to Darnell Mooney, who was untouched, and he should have gotten up and just ran. And unfortunately, he didn't because he thought that the whistle was blown, and the refs have been a massive problem in the NFL this year, and yesterday's game certainly was no exception. But still, I think it just kind of summed up the night that we were in. Bayesian's performance yesterday was okay, and once again, it certainly was a lot better than what we saw against the Las Vegas Raiders. But a lot of those yards unfortunately came when the game kind of was already determined, and certainly what, again, yesterday's loss doesn't fall exclusively on Bayesian, but I think Bayesian, yesterday's performance certainly does not scream that he is someone that will likely replace Justin Fields anytime soon. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that was a stupid narrative to begin with. I don't think, anybody aside from a few people, maybe, crazy Bears fans thought that Bagent could be the long-term Bears franchise quarterback because he just doesn't have the upside to be, a top 5, top 10 quarterback, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
could maybe be like a below average starter somewhere in the NFL at some point in his career. He certainly does have the ability to get the
Mm-hmm.
ball out quickly, ability to make decisions quickly. So that's definitely something that, especially on better teams than the Bears, that would be used, I feel like, in a better way than the Bears are using it right now. So he definitely could be, an NFL quarterback somewhere in the league, but I don't think he's going to be, a high level starter. And if you're not going to be a high level starter, then obviously he's not going to be the long-term Bears franchise quarterback. So I think you said, right, like it was on display, his lack of, well, he did have a deep throw on the first play of the game, but he still doesn't have the same arm that Justin Fields has throwing deep or making, crazy arm angle passes. Like he can't do those things that other high level quarterbacks can do. And, he's a good guy. He's a good backup quarterback, but I think Bears fans were setting expectations for him a little bit too high, and they were kind of brought down to earth the last game because he certainly did not look like a guy that could, carry a team on his back. And it's unfair to him too because the Bears have put him in a situation where, as a rookie quarterback, we're expecting him to be perfect, which is not going to be the case for any rookie quarterback. And even with Justin Fields in year one, he made a lot of mistakes in year one. So we shouldn't, pile on Tyson Bagent and act like he's the only reason why we lost this game. But like you said, like he was not good in this game either.
Yeah, he threw two picks. I mean, he could have thrown a couple more had the the Chargers did not drop the ball, or had they defended a little bit more carefully. Those two picks that he threw, the one, especially in the second quarter, I believe, where just a complete miscommunication as to where he was going to throw, or who was running the routes. I think the one where he threw it on the sideline where Darnell Mooney was running, and then there was also, Darnell Mooney was running on the flat, and then and then DJ Moore was also on the other side, and then somehow Bayesian just threw the ball to the defender, and there was a lot of question as to who was, you know, who was supposed to run that route and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So it was just a little bit crazy. And you know, overall, the performance himself, and you know, I'm going to try and pull up that from interception in just a moment here. But you know, I think it was kind of fitting that you know, against the Raiders, you know, somewhat of a mediocre team despite their record, a very very mediocre team. You know, going up against a career backup and Brian Hoyer, certainly um, it was probably a lot more easier, you know, game wise. You know, the Bears stuck with the you know, the script, and then they dominated at home, and then they go on the road, and then somehow they revert back to the first 3 weeks of the season where defense was just completely uh, outclassed in that soft zone scheme. Um, you know, they were just committing just bad penalties after bad penalties, shooting themselves in the foot. Um, Nothing was just going right at all last night. And from your perspective, watching the game, what was the most frustrating thing for you watching that game yesterday?
Definitely the defense, I'd say, because the defense allowed 24 points in the first half, right? So you're not going to win any football games allowing 24 points in one half. And in the second half, too, in the third quarter, they weren't good
Yeah.
at the beginning. They did tighten it up a little bit at the end of the third quarter, in the fourth quarter as well. But at that point, it was already garbage time. So the Chargers were not looking to push the
Mhm.
ball downfield as much anymore. So it is concerning that, we
Right.
still cannot get any pressure on the quarterback, only sending 4. We have to blitz, to get any pressure on the quarterback, and that's just not sustainable for any defense throughout the course of an entire season, especially against a better quarterback like a Justin Herbert. And it also kind of goes to show you that the success that the Bears defense has had has only been against bad quarterbacks, right? Like even last year, we beat Trey Lance, we beat
Right.
Mac Jones, we beat
It
Davis
is.
Mills, but
Mhm.
we haven't beat any good quarterbacks, right? So, it shows you like
Yeah.
this defense still needs a lot of work on it. Eberflus is not a good head coach, not a good defensive. Maybe he's a decent defensive mind, but he's not like a top defensive mind in this league. And without the star pass rushers too, like it's a recipe for disaster, right? Like we can't get pressure on the quarterback. This coverage, that we play, it's still like way too far back. We're not really pressing guys to the line of scrimmage, so it's just a total, disaster for lack of a better word on the defense right now.
Yeah. You know, listening to Eberflus talk at halftime, it was so frustrating because, you know, he was talking about the tackling issue, and then the, you know, the underneath zone, and you know that we have to be better and all of that stuff. But you know, the problem is, you know, who is the man who is responsible for, you know, implementing that soft zone where you have two aggressive cornerbacks in Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson playing an aggressive man to man, and then you have zero pass rush, you know, without no man to man zone. It just basically all zone, soft zone coverage all night, where Justin Herbert just completely dissected the Bears defense. I think he was what, 18 of 18, or is it 11 of 11 to start the game?
Something like that.
Right?
I don't remember that.
Something like that. Yes,
It
yes.
was a lot.
Basically, he was, you know, he was aided by the poor tackling of the Chicago Bears, because I believe they gave up like 169 yards after the catch in the first half alone. So basically, he doesn't, you know, Herbert doesn't need to do a lot, because all he could do is just whatever the Bears gave them, they could just dump the ball off to people like Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and and let them, you know, just catch the ball and run, because the Bears just couldn't tackle anybody all night, and that was really watching it frustrating, because a guy who continues to harp on that hits principle like a junior varsity coach, somehow the players doesn't seem to be resonating. You know, the hits principle, maybe the T, which stands for the ball, should be, you know, changed to, you know, tackling, because the tackling was atrocious last night. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree, and it's kind of surprising because the last few games, I feel like the tackling has been really good. So for them to revert back to not being good tacklers, especially like TJ Edwards missed two really crucial tackles in the first half. One which actually ended up being a touchdown by Austin Eckler. He completely whiffed on that tackle. So
Yes.
that really confused me because this entire season he's been a really good tackler, very reliable tackler. So I don't know like how this entire Bears team was so unprepared going into that game to tackle guys. It kind of makes me wonder like what does this team do after a win? Do they even practice after a win? Because it seems like after every win this regime has had, we lay out an absolute stinker in the following game. Like we cannot get back-to-back wins with this coaching staff because we're probably not a very good coach football team. So yeah, the lack of tackling, especially for a team that plays a softer coverage like a cover two scheme, if you're going to keep everything in front of you, you have to be able to tackle well, and we cannot tackle anybody that night. So totally agree. The lack of tackling was very, very glaringly bad, and it's a bad reflection on the players and the coaching staff too.
Yeah, and then Eberflus has the audacity to continue to harp about the execution part, like like a broken clock. The problem is you're the one who's implementing that system, and you're the one who is in charge of overseeing everything. Now you're calling the defense. Now there's an added pressure and responsibility of being not only a head coach, but now you're running the defensive coordinator as well. And for you to not being able to not only improve the players' performance, but there's a significant regression we are seeing with this organization from top to bottom right now under this regime is just simply stunning, and it's just basically really really sickening because we've been used to watching horrible coaching, from Tressman to John Fox to Matt Nagy and now this. It seems as though, except for the 1 year with Matt Nagy, this organization just seemed to cannot get over the hump or just really get themselves to reach that level that they're expected to. And coming into this year, there was a certain amount of expectations and excitement that that the Bears were finally ready to make moves. And from the very get go against the game against the Green Bay Packers, where they lost in embarrassing fashion, given that where the Packers are right now record wise, it just angers me that because if we had taken more game preparation and preseason more seriously, I think we should have been able to beat teams like Green Bay, and even loss against the Vikings a couple of weeks ago should have been avoided had we done a better preparation. And we will get to about that in a little bit later. But there are a lot of games that the Chicago Bears have left on the table, and I'm not saying that will certainly make things any better moving forward, but I'm just so sick and tired of these coaching staff, and a lot has been made certainly on Twitter about who these coaching staff is, and just the lack of accountability that exists in. I just can't take this coaching staff very, very seriously, and then and at this point, and I understand that we're going to probably resort to having to let this season play out, unfortunately. But at this point, I'm just done with this coaching staff, and I think a lot of people feel very strongly about who Matt Eberflus is, and the lack of accountability that's coming from him and his entire coaching staff. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Rashad?
No, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, this coaching staff has proven time and time again that they don't know how to run things. They don't know how to scheme up their personnel, based on what they have. They're not able to really get the best out of their players like other coaches in this league can. And I think that's you define a coach by what they can do with the personnel they're given. And obviously Ryan Poles has had a lot of misses too. Like he's not totally, without blame in this whole bad team, but I still feel like this roster has more talent on it than what we're getting out of it, right? Like guys like, DeMarcus Walker, Unique Ngakoue, Other guy, Tremaine Edmonds. Like these guys were really good on their other teams, especially guys like Tremaine Edmonds, and they're not doing as well on this team. And that it can't just be that all these players at the same time started sucking all of a sudden, right? I think the coaching and the scheme definitely does play into that a lot, and we're just not getting anything out of our guys. And even when we did hire Eberflus, like I was never a huge fan of the move, right? Because I
Me
think that
neither.
we did not even know who he was when we hired him, and it was kind of like a classic Chicago Bears move, right? Like hiring a defensive minded head coach from a organization that did not even have like a crazy amount of success the last 5 or 6 years. So like the move in itself was questionable when we did make that move, but looking back on it 2 years later, it's even more questionable when you see how bad the team has been. And he's in the running for the worst head coach in Bears history. Like I think that he is the worst head coach probably in Chicago Bears history based on his winning percentage, based on his lack of ability to get anything out of the talent he's given. So it's not a good situation all around, and he's not going to be in Chicago for much longer. He's basically guaranteed his ticket out of Chicago after the season is over.
Yeah, I wish this organization really took the took it more seriously. And I don't understand the notion that of coming from other people who says that it won't make much difference. Well, you know what? Do you want Matt Eberflus continue to coach this team and continue to give a same coach speak about the executions and throw people under the bus? I don't. I mean, at this point, I can surely think other people on the staff, mainly, Richard Hightower, who is a standout, special teams coach, um, who has done a very good job with this unit. Sans Velus Jones, but which we will get to in a bit. But I would rather see somebody like Richard Hightower, who has to be involved in both offense and defensive meetings, having to, get the special teamers, be ready, and have him lead as the interim head coach. We could just throw out the Lovey Smith and all those nonsense stuff outright the window. You're just going to have to ride out with whatever you have, and then just make sure that Matt Eberflus and even Luke Getzey, for all I care, doesn't continue to do any further damage. So I just don't understand the notion about there's no one else available, or there isn't anybody worthy to take over. That's basically nonsense. And then that whatever that the Bears are doing right now, it's clear it's not working. And at this point, Ryan Poles is basically going to be walking the same plank as Matt Eberflus, because he's the one who hired him. Okay, whatever people want to believe about, maybe it was an arranged marriage and stuff like that. Ryan Poles basically it chose him, and that's a huge accountability that needs to be, put on Ryan Poles, whether it's fair or not. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. He even admitted it himself that he was the one that chose Matt Eberflus. Like in his opening press conference, he said that the decision to hire Matt Eberflus was solely my decision. So, like, there you go. He's already, he took responsibility for that when it happened. So he has to take responsibility now. And it was a big miss by Ryan Poles. I mean, he definitely chose the worst head coach candidate available in that cycle. We could have had Brian Dable. We could have had Mike McDaniel, and even Dan Quinn with the Cowboys. I know he chose to go back to the Cowboys, but if he got Dan Quinn, that would have been a much better head coaching hire too. So yeah, like I kind of go back and forth on Ryan Poles though, because on one hand, I still believe a lot in his drafting ability. Like his drafts have been pretty good, and I still think that his overall like management of the cap, management of like resources has been pretty decent. But if he doesn't use these cap resources well, if he doesn't hire the right head coach, like none of it actually matters, right? So even though I do want to give Ryan Poles probably one more year, I do understand why a lot of Bears fans are out on him too at this point, because we have not seen any results in, basically 1.5 years now. And, personally, I do think that, McCaskey's, Kevin Warren are going to give him at least one more year to actually use the draft picks that he has accumulated. But if next year we again have a bad record, then we're probably going to start over, again. And it's just not a good situation to be in, changing your general managers so often as a franchise, right? Because, Ryan Pace got 7 years, but before that we had Phil Emery for how many years? Like it wasn't that many years, right? So It's just not a good situation for the Chicago Bears right now, all in all.
I understand your notions, and that is very valid. Uh, but the argument about Ryan Pace getting 7 years is somewhat, that's been mentioned in the Twitter world as somewhat of a laughable defense. And it's nothing against you, of course, but this is very much somewhat similar to 2014 when Phil Emery, got only 3 years, and it is all because of his hiring of um, Mark Trestman, and this season is very much resembling that of you know uh, Matt Eberflus and Mark Trestman and the man who hired him. We certainly haven't had ugly, back-to-back 50 burger games, but the 2 years that he has been in the helm, he is 5-20 now. So, and the five teams that he has beaten was last year's season opener against Trey Lance and the 49ers. Lance, by the way, he's no longer on the team. The Houston Texans, the team that helped give us the number one overall pick last year. The New England Patriots, a couple of years removed from Tom Brady, and that was certainly the game that really jump started Justin Fields last year. And those are the three games. And then the two games this year are the Las Vegas Raiders, the team certainly that is a terribly coached by Josh McDaniels. And then a couple of weeks before that against the Washington Commanders, which was a tremendous performance in which neither one of us saw coming. They doubled on Washington 40-20, and we thought, okay, now this is something that we can finally see build upon. And then 11 days later against Minnesota, they completely crapped the bed. Justin Fields gets injured, and he's still on recovery mode, unfortunately. And we ushered in Tyson Bagent era, and it's just been a horrible nightmare. And I totally agree. At this point, I think you and I both, and I think a lot of the Bears fans have pretty much have already made up our own decision on what Matt Eberflus is and what he is as a head coach. So, yeah, I don't know if I can really pull up with this for the next 9 weeks or so. It's going to be very, very difficult emotionally because, you saw them embarrass themselves on national television once again. And it was just a horrible look on national television where we were completely embarrassed and outclassed on the field and also off the field as well, which we'll get to in a bit. But so the day after, the Chicago radio, sports radio, you live in the Chicago area, so you might have heard a lot about, yesterday's game, which, the NBC was all over, Tyson Bagent love, and it was just somewhat embarrassing and sickening. It had to be. I know this is what happens when you are starting the 30th starting quarterback since 2002, and the team as a whole is just bad, and there's nothing interesting about this about this team, and that they're just basically trying to make Tyson Bagent more than what he is, which we, from a undrafted Division II rookie from Shepherd University somewhere in West Virginia to where he is now, there's no shame. And I truly give a lot of credit for somebody like him to get to where he is. And I also have to give credit to the Chicago Bears for giving him a shot, rather than giving PJ Walker a shot, because Walker was truly bad in the preseason, and still owed him $2 million. But the Bears made the right decision and the right call to certainly give Bagent the opportunity, and even well over Nate Peterman. But I want you to listen to the clip from Dan Bernstein on Bernstein and Holmes on 670 The Score this morning. He went after the so-called perceived
I'm just
backstabbing, and then the Bears using Chris Collins' words as some sort of a national, mouthpiece to badmouth Justin Fields.
sick of the big picture of what's going on here. I'm sick about it. If you don't want to coach Justin Fields, if that's too much for you, if you can't handle him, then you suck as a coach and bring in some other people to do it. That's your damn problem. This guy called out the coaches earlier in the year, and he said, look, I'm overloaded with stuff. I've got too much on my plate here. I want to get out there and play the kind of game I'm capable of playing. And what is it? He said coaching. And then they made him apologize for it. They made him apologize for finally publicly saying, screw it. These coaches are messing with me. They're trying to ask me to do stuff I'm not comfortable doing. And he said it. And now it's like, well, they just ignore the fact that he's hurt. And the moment they get their chance, the moment they get to national TV, then they start that little backstabbing whisper campaign. It sucks. It sucks. If you don't want to coach him, get out. And Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, or whatever it is, don't make this mistake again. Whoever the next guy is, whether it's Justin, I feel terrible.
I'm not sure that Poles is innocent in this.
I'm not sure he is either. But this is dirty pool.
That's
ugly.
exactly what it is.
It's ugly. It's ugly. The overtones are ugly. The ass covering is ugly. And that's why a lot of it pissed me off. Because you don't have to be the most perceptive person around this team to understand what's going on here.
No,
you don't.
That's what I'm saying. Like people who are genuinely, like from my mentions last night, people who are genuinely like, wow, this is a cool story with Tyson Bagent, and I hope he does well. By the end of the night, we're like, what the hell was that?
Right.
Like, why does the other guy have to get grief? It's one thing if he walked away with a 300-yard, 3-touchdown. If he would have had Will Levis's line in last night's game, for example, that'd be one thing. It's a quarterback that threw 2 interceptions and could have thrown 5.
Yeah. Well, that was certainly an epic rant, and I don't know if you're able to listen to, sports talk radio in between, you're in between, your breaks or even at work, Rashad. But is this your first time you heard about that rant today?
Yes, yeah, I saw it on my Twitter feed, but I didn't actually watch the entire video. So this was the first time I viewed it, and yeah,
okay. There's nothing. I don't see anything wrong with it. Basically, I think I know somebody want to call Bernstein maybe a conspiracy theorist or something like that, but yesterday's game in which both Tirico and Collinsworth were loving Tyson Bagent, no matter how bad he was truly just like makes you want to shake your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, I get it for sure. I think there definitely could be something there, but at the same time, Collinsworth also does this to. Seems like a lot of quarterbacks he kind of falls in love with. Like Aaron Rodgers, for example. But Aaron Rodgers is totally different. Obviously, he's actually a good quarterback. So like hyping up Tyson Bagent, that does not really make that much sense. But Collinsworth is like a narrative-driven person. Like he loves stories, he loves narratives, right? So he's gonna. I think it's not too surprising that he would find a way to make this Tyson Bagent story more than it is, but at the same time, like Dan Bernstein was saying, it also could speak to the Bears coaching staff. Maybe at this point, just not believing in Fields and not wanting to coach Fields, and maybe that's why behind the scenes they're saying stuff that they're not saying publicly to the media or to the fan base. So if that's the case, if the second option is the case, then I lose more respect for this coaching staff than I did not have much respect for them to begin with. But if that's the case, then I don't have any respect for them whatsoever. So it just sucks. We have to keep on talking about this, right? Our quarterback being, criticized by the coaching staff, and the back and forth with the media, with the fan base. Like, I just wish we had one good quarterback, one good coach to actually like rally around for the first time ever. It seems like every 3 years we're in the same discussion talking points, which just repeat itself throughout all of Bears history.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything seems to seem to add up what Dan Bernstein was saying. And say what you will about Dan. I don't listen to his show all the time, but he does make a very good point on this one because again, the love fest that was being seen on NBC on Tyson Bagent was just screams you know conspiracy, and certainly both Tirico and Collinsworth leading up to the game is going to have some conversations with the coaching staff on both teams, right? And then there's going to be some national narrative about it. Tirico was on Waddle and Silby last week, and he has already mentioned that will be heavily featured in the story. Certainly, that was well planted a week ago. And then the Bears coaching staff certainly trying to do their darnest to save their job, and then trying to push the narrative that Bayesian is a much better fit for whatever the hell Luke Getsy is trying to run. But whether it's Bayesian or Fields, it's quite clear that Luke Getsy doesn't know how to get the most out of this player, how to get the most out of the talent that we have. And it's not, and I understand, we're not the top echelon talent, but we're not devoid of talent like we had last year. We certainly have much better offensive line, even though it has been riddled with injuries. We have a very good running backs, 3 of them. Unfortunately, Khalil Herbert is still on IR, but Dante Freeman and Roshan Johnson, Johnson came back from the nasty concussion, ran very, very well yesterday. Those are 2 capable running backs that they can run on, and they should lean on a lot more. But instead of leaning on Dante Foreman like they did last week against the Raiders, Foreman only got 2 carries. I need somebody to explain to me what is Luke Getsy trying to do. And Getsy, after he threw a long, allowing Bayesian to throw a long, deep pass to Mooney, who should have scored a touchdown, just basically got up and ran if he wasn't touched, and then went back to his unconventional offense where he had Trent Taylor do a sweep towards Khalil Mack's side, and it just got busted up, and then Bayesian got sacked, and then and then the field goal or whatever they were trying to accomplish just completely went right out of the window. And from that point on, the Bears just completely just nosedived both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, the thing about the Bears is that you can tell from the beginning of the game if they're going to have a good game or not. I think every win that the Bears have had in this era, in the Eberflus era, they've started out really good. Like there's the Commanders game, for example, we started out hot. Justin Fields deep bomb to DJ Moore. Even the other good games we've had so far, like you can tell from the very beginning if the Bears offense is going to have a good day. But when that happened, the Trent Taylor end around sweep, whatever it was, I knew from that moment, like, it was not going to be a good day for the Bears offense. And I totally agree, man. Like, I don't know what the hell Luke Getsy is doing half the time with some of these play calls. Like, clearly he is smart enough to be in the NFL, but I don't think he's good enough to be a play caller in this league, right? There's a big difference between being a quarterback's coach, quality controls coach, and actually calling the plays, designing the plays, scheming up the plays, because a lot of people cannot do that. A lot of people cannot handle that. And Luke Getsy clearly is not one of those guys that can handle that responsibility, because now we have a very big sample size of bad mistakes, bad decisions, bad, game planning, after bye weeks, after long periods of rest too. So it's just, I totally agree with you. Like, I'm totally out on Luke Getsy, and I don't think he's going to be a play caller ever again in the NFL with how bad he's built here.
Yeah, I don't know how in the world they came to the conclusion that Luke Getsy was qualified to run the offense just because he was with Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. Yeah, it was just a total mismatch, and I know somebody was saying it facetiously that whether the Bears win by 30 or lose by 30, it seems like Luke Getsy is always even keeled and look calm. I do believe it was all CHGO yesterday, Adam Hogue, mocking Luke Getsy and his, so-called confidence. But, it's just nothing but just a fake stuff. And that I think, it's just basically, I I'm just starting to really get flustered and just getting angry about the whole game. And let's talk about the other stuff that we saw on the game yesterday. What stood out to you, both on offense and defense, both good and bad? I'm going to start with the offense. Darnell Wright, once again, despite his shoulder injury, had another fantastic game. Well, okay, maybe if fantastic is too strong a word. I would say had a very decent game going up against the likes of Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. I know there was a one where he whiffed on 4th and 1 in their own territory, just before halftime, or maybe when was that? Third down, third quarter, in deep in their territory on 4th and 1. He whiffed on the block, which unfortunately caused Roshan Johnson to get blocked. So that's number one. Cole Kmet, certainly became like a favorite target of Bagent yesterday because certainly, they were playing catch up, and I think Kmet had 10 catches yesterday, but he had another false start penalty, and he gets tackled and then goes down rather easily, but still, he had a very good game overall as well. Did I miss anybody in terms of standouts on offense?
Not really. There weren't too many standouts on offense, I'd say. Maybe DJ Moore to some extent, like in the first half, he had a couple nice plays, yards he got after the catch. But in the second half, I think we only targeted him one time, which again goes to show you how bad of a play caller Luke Getsy is, that we could not even feature the best player on this offense by far. DJ Moore had 50 yards still in this game, but he could have easily had 100 plus. I think, especially if Justin Fields was at quarterback, because, we need to feature this guy. And, with Justin Fields, just a couple games ago, he had 230 yards against the Commanders, right? So it was kind of disappointing that even though DJ Moore had some good plays in this game, we still did not get him the ball as much as he should have gotten the ball. But aside from that, I just cannot think of many other players that even had a good game on offense the last game, because we only scored 13 points against such a bad defense.
Oh yeah, that's without a doubt. The fact that he only got one target in the second half is absolutely disgusting, and I'm truly wondering what is Ryan Poles exactly thinking right now. He was the centerpiece in which the Bears got from Carolina when they traded away their number 1 overall pick. This offseason. Last offseason. And he was supposed to help, invigorate the offense. He might not be the number one, like a true number 1 receiver, like we see in, guys like, Jamar Chase or, Tyreek Hill to a degree. But he is still more than capable, and we've seen that. The breakout performance he had against the Washington. The Bears would not have won had DJ Moore didn't break out. Let's not kid ourselves. So, for them to not even feature DJ Moore, it is a crime, and I certainly hope that the Ryan Poles is paying attention, because right now, if he doesn't fire Matt Eberflus and and all of his entire coaching staff, then we can both agree he should also be fired, because they're tied together. And certainly what we saw yesterday, both offensively and defensively, is also an indictment on Ryan Poles' ability to draft and sign free agents. The team that he put together barely are functioning right now and are even competitive on the field right now. Defensively, so I don't know. There aren't that many players that I can think of that did well. Maybe Tyreek Stevenson, he held on his own yesterday. But once again, he was called for the pass interference. Whether you think it's a bogus call or not, I think he's unfortunately developing a reputation around the league that he is a rookie who plays way too aggressive and just still doesn't have the technique to go one-on-one against the elite receivers or the receiver across from him. What do you think of Stevenson as a player? Do you think even with all the penalties that he's getting, do you think he's making strong progress? And from yesterday, did anybody else stood out on defense?
Yeah, regarding Tyreek Stevenson, I think last game or last game now, the Raiders game, he actually had a really good performance against Devontae Adams and some other guys he was guarding in that game. So I thought that was definitely a strong step forward for him. But last game was definitely, I wouldn't say a full step back, but he definitely, like you mentioned, had problems with the penalties. And that's going to be a thing for him probably this entire rookie season while he's still learning how to play cornerback in this league, how to play within the rule book. But at some point, he is going to have to cut back on those penalties. Otherwise, going forward, he's not going to be a starting cornerback in this league, right? If you're making multiple penalties per game on crucial downs like third down, third and long, if you're committing a pass interference penalty down the field, that's going to ruin games for you. So I still like Tyreek Stevenson as a player. I still think he can be a pretty good player for the Bears long term, but this year definitely has been a lot of ups and downs. And looking at the rest of the defense, the one major takeaway still is that we cannot find any way to get a pass rush, right? Like, where's Yannick Ngakoue? We signed this guy to a $13 million, 1-year deal.
$8 million 1 year, I believe. So.
Oh, got it. I could have sworn it was more, but yeah, hopefully it's $8 million.
8.5 or something like that. Yes.
But regardless, like he only has, I think, 2 sacks in the year, maybe a little bit more, but like he's had 8+ sacks every year of his career besides for this year, which just makes no sense to me at all. Like, how can he not succeed with the Chicago Bears when he succeeded everywhere else? It kind of goes to show you also the coaching staff is not using these guys the right way, right? So the defensive line still has major deficiencies. I thought that, Zach Pickens, the rookie, actually had a couple nice tackles, a couple nice pressures on the quarterback. But aside from that, we didn't get any pressure on the quarterback aside from when TJ Edwards actually blitzed a few times in the second half. I think we actually got some quarterback hits from TJ Edwards just blitzing, but that's not very sustainable, long term, having to send an extra guy every time you want to get any pressure on the quarterback.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the Bears defensive scheme, unfortunately, they're not, they don't have players playing up to their strength. And basically, his Matt Eberflus' system is basically, prolonging the weakness. Basically, soft zone coverage. You have 2 aggressive man-to-man guys who are always going to be picked upon, and certainly, both Jalen and Tyreek both getting pass interference penalties. And I get it; it's just maybe somewhat of his bogus or maybe weak calls at times. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in, unfortunately. And, the system doesn't really tailor to the player's strength. And we complained about that on offense, but right now we're seeing, and yesterday we saw nationally that the defense just went back to a very bad, regression, and a coach who always points a finger at the players on the field for not doing their job when they're the ones who are supposed to, in year 2, have a better understanding of the personnel's strength and then be able to tailor to their strength, play to their strength. And that's a huge problem, we see with football, where coaches are, trying to force players to play their own scheme and systems. And then, we've seen that with Matt Nagy, for 4 years, basically offensively. So, we're seeing that with both offense and defense, which is a huge problem and something that hopefully, whoever the new coach is, we're going to see a lot more, discipline, and then hopefully understand the coach, get a coach who will be able to understand about utilizing players' strength. It's been a long time coming, and then the players, I think, are just right now just basically simmering and frustrated about the way things have gone the last 2 years. So we'll see where things go moving forward. One other thing that stood out yesterday during the broadcast was team president Kevin Warren, who was actually in attendance yesterday. And you saw a brief moment where Kevin Warren was seen being caught and then being frustrated, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What do you make of that? And certainly, I wrote that him being at the game and being frustrated, that's somewhat of a low bar, considering that the president that he took over is basically Ted Phillips, and certainly that's a low bar. And Ted isn't the kind of person who would go to the game outwardly because of his lack of popularity amongst the fans. So this is a low bar for Kevin Warren to clear. And then the frustration that we saw right there. I think this is the first time that we genuinely saw him this frustrated. And then whatever that he is holding, certainly it does seem like he's been taking notes vigorously over what he has seen so far this year. What do you make of this? Him being seen frustrated, and do you feel that Warren is finally maybe already made his mind up? After yesterday's game.
Yeah, I think he definitely has after watching his reaction right there. I mean, I actually like seeing a raw reaction from a higher up person on an NFL team, right? Because like you mentioned, like we never saw Ted Phillips really at games because he had such a lack of popularity. So the fact that Kevin Warren is out there and looking frustrated, that's good because he should be frustrated, right? Like he should be wanting to put an actual good product on the football field for the Chicago Bears. And now as the president of this organization, he's going to have the power to do whatever he wants with Ryan Poles, probably with Matt Eberflus. And I think he has made up his mind for sure on Eberflus. Like I don't think even Ryan Poles probably has made up his mind on Eberflus if Ryan Poles does stay next year. Like I don't think either Poles or Kevin Warren are gonna want to bring Eberflus along next year just because of how much bad they have seen Alice's entire coaching staff this entire year. So I think the main question is, what does Warren think about Ryan Poles? Because I'm not really sure what he thinks about Ryan Poles. Like like I stated this entire, during this entire broadcast, like I kind of want to give Ryan Poles one more year, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what Kevin Warren thinks. And I'm not sure what he thinks, right? He hasn't talked too much about Ryan Poles specifically. So I'm sure we're going to hear more out of him at the end of this year. Probably he doesn't do too many media interviews during the course of the season, but we're going to have to wait until the end of the season to see what he thinks about Ryan Poles. But I 100% believe he does not like Matt Eberflus.
Yeah, I hope that Kevin Warren has been paying very close attention to what he's seen on the field. He's not just a man who brings or he's in charge of bringing the stadium to Chicago, wherever it might be, the city or the suburbs, wherever it might be. If the product on the field sucks, no one's going to pay money to go see it, no matter how beautiful the stadium is. I think the fans' apathy has reached an all-time high where, the fans are no longer angry. They don't care. And, I've said this before, Kevin Warren having, talking to both businesses and political leaders, all over, the Chicago area, he has to probably understand the pulse of the city and where things are right now, talking to, both, business and political leaders. I'm sure, they talk in depth about, the way the Bears are playing and how it doesn't really inspire confidence or it doesn't really inspire anything. Watching it is just a real gruesome 3 hours of just a non-descriptive, boring football, which, the last few years, we've come to, used to that, except for last year where Justin Fields was basically running all over, the NFL record books. The watching this team has been basically a pain, painful, excuse me. And, hopefully Kevin Warren understands that if the on-field product sucks, It doesn't matter how beautiful and expensive the stadium is and how great of a stadium it is. No one's going to pay attention if the Bears are still struggling to win football games and Bears still are struggling to find and develop their own franchise quarterback. So, I hope that Warren has been paying close attention. Hopefully he's already drawn his own conclusion, and I hope that the George McCaskey and even Ted Phillips, who apparently does be seen around and work as some sort of a consulting role. With the Bears organization, does not interfere with whatever the job and whatever the decision Kevin Warren makes, because he is the president of football operations now. And I heard about listening to Waddle and Selby this afternoon. There was one caller who said that basically Warren is just a rah guy, and that he was only brought in to do stadium things and does nothing else, which I think is totally wrong, and that I hope that Bears certainly didn't hire Warren just to be that, and I hope Warren didn't take the job because he wanted to leave Big Ten badly. Even though Big Ten commissioner is a tremendous job, and the job that he has done, within Big Ten the last couple of years since he took over is certainly a very good one, even though he may have made lots of enemies. But I hope he didn't take the job out of desperation, and that he would take any job, and that he would, resort himself to just being the person in charge of the stadium and nothing else more. So, we'll see what happens. Whenever Kevin Warren is seen more and more, I think that Kevin is, hopefully paying close attention to not only what's happening on the field, but whenever Matt Eberflus speaks post-game conference, or the day after, whenever he goes to ESPN 1000 to talk, with Waddle and Selby, 10 minutes after 2 p.m. Central Time, to talk about the game the day before. And, hopefully whatever he's saying, they're paying very, very close attention. All right. So tomorrow is the NFL trade deadline. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the Bears and cornerback Jalen Johnson is anywhere close. I was kind of under the impression that, he was very close, but it seems as though they're just basically trading numbers. And so, Rashab, regarding tomorrow, what do you expect the Bears to do? Do they stay put, or do they make some small, minor 1 or 2 moves and then just basically call it a day?
I think they're probably going to stay put. The only player I could see being moved from this current team is maybe Jalen Johnson, but I don't want that to happen at all. I think that Ryan Poles is hopefully smart enough to realize that, cornerbacks like Jalen Johnson don't come around very easily. So I really hope he does pay him. Maybe he's not going to pay him right now. Maybe at the end of this year, he'll pay him. But Jalen Johnson is the only guy I could even think of maybe getting moved from this team. As for acquisitions, maybe a Chase Young, Montez Sweat if the price is right. I think that the Commanders definitely are looking to move off of at least one of those guys. And the Bears, if they do offer like a 3rd-round pick, I mean, our 3rd-round pick could be the highest 3rd-round pick offered out of any other teams that want him, right? So I think that does give us a leg up in like actually trading for a star pass rusher if we do want to get one, not only for this year, but for like the future. Like if you get a Montez Sweat, if you get a Chase Young, you probably are going to extend them to like a 3-4 year contract. So that could solve the Bears pass rusher problems, at least for like a little bit. So I think that's the only move I could really see us making, right? Like I don't think any other position group addressing it makes sense right now. Because it's just like this is already a lost season. Like we're not going to make the playoffs this year. We're not going to do anything in the playoffs this year. So whatever moves we make are going to be mostly towards the future. So, I only acquiring Chase Young could be the only thing that I would see the Bears could do, or Montez Sweat or anybody, that could be helping out rushing the passer.
Yeah, after yesterday's game, pass rush remains a huge problem, and the defense, continues to, give up yards because they can't put any pressure on a quarterback, and you have a head coach slash DC who doesn't seem to be interested in blitzing or just mixing it up, from a soft zone coverage to doing something more man to man and put more pressure. I don't know if adding Sweat or Young would make that much of a difference, unfortunately. I know Young has been linked to the Bears over the weekend, but again, his medical records, unless the Bears can get them and if they like it, that's one thing. But given all the injuries that he's gone through, I'm not so sure if I hope and pray that the Bears don't give up another second round for another Chase. Of course, I'm referring to last year when they gave up a second round pick to Chase Claypool, who was basically run himself out of town, and and certainly deserve all the wrath he got for his lackadaisical attitude and his lack of motivation. So I just hope that the Bears don't make trade just for the sake of making a trade, because we know that the Jalen Johnson is a very good player. Certainly he's had health issues, and his production certainly hasn't been all that great. But he is a true number one cornerback. The players like that are the foundation piece that the Bears need to keep and start building. And even if it's somebody who was drafted by Ryan Pace, the previous general manager, I just don't think I think it is a wrong move. Excuse me, to move player just because he was drafted and coveted by the last regime. The way he has played so far in the last couple of weeks certainly, is worthy of a contract extension. Yesterday he ended up, giving up a touchdown to Simi Fehoko, when he got washed in the near the end zone. But certainly, other than that, he's been very, very good. Whatever the number is, I hope that they can, come to terms. And if worst case, they can use a franchise tag on him and pay him top 5, which I'm sure that's not what they were intended for. But if you can't come to terms with Jalen Johnson, that's another option you can use, even though that it might not be something that Johnson wants at all, and that could certainly lead to a long-term holdout next offseason if the Bears ended up using franchise tag on him. But I don't want him to trade away Johnson, just to make more cause more problems offensively. Excuse me, I apologize. My battery was almost running out, and I wanted to plug it in. I'm so sorry about that. So again, let me repeat what I just said. I don't want Poles trading away players just because it was from a previous regime, and then creating more holes just to fill more, more needs, creating more needs in the offseason when you already have so many holes to fill. And that also includes perhaps another starting franchise quarterback at the very top of the list. It doesn't really make sense. So I just hope that Ryan Poles is working feverishly, with Jalen Johnson's representatives to hammer out a decent contract. Now, at least one thing that's promising is that Cole Kmet did ended up signing an extension, and Kmet was a player that was drafted by previous regime. So hopefully, if Kmet can get a extension, and then hopefully Johnson, who was also drafted in the second round in the same draft class back in 2020, can also get a very good, decent an extension, maybe 4 years, 72 million or something like that. And hopefully both sides will come to their senses, and Ryan Poles will certainly does something good in order to be on the good side from a PR perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think we're gonna trade Jalen Johnson. I think it's a thing going on right now because we're a little bit far apart in contract negotiations. But I do think at some point we are gonna come to terms on an agreement, because Jalen Johnson is too good of a cornerback to let go. And if you do trade him right now, you're gonna have Kyler Gordon as cornerback number 1 or Tyreek Stevenson as cornerback number 1, and that's not an ideal situation for the rest of the season. Especially
No.
for Ryan Poles too, who has to win some games this year to prove to the front office that his players that he drafted, the players that he signed, have talent. Players that can actually win football games. So I totally agree with you that I don't think we're going to do too much at the trade deadline. Maybe acquire a pass rusher, but it should be a pretty quiet day for the Bears probably tomorrow.
Right. And one more thing about Johnson. The reason why he should stay on is because, Terrell Smith is still on IR, I believe, with Mono. Now, if Terrell Smith was healthy, that might be, okay, at least they have a capable replacement. But why trade away Johnson when you have Terrell Smith, who is still on IR, and I don't think he's ready to come off maybe until after the Saints game or maybe after the Carolina game. So you still have a couple more weeks before, Smith is eligible to come off IR. And, you don't want to trade away knowing that Smith is, ready to come off IR. So I think that's one reason why I don't think Jalen Johnson will be traded as of tomorrow. Listen, unless somebody offers maybe a late first-round pick, like, say, for example, the 49ers, who are struggling badly right now. They've lost the third straight game in a row yesterday after losing to the Cincinnati Bengals at home. And then, the Dallas Cowboys, which, Tavon Diggs is out, with the Achilles injury a couple of weeks ago, and certainly could use more, dynamic, playmaker in the secondary. Even though they've done very, very well without Diggs, if they offer maybe like a late first or second round pick, that's understandable. But when you still don't have players who are capable of replacing, I certainly hope that Johnson does not move unless they get blown away by whatever the package is being blown. But then that's understandable. But I hope they don't make any more create any more holes. And you're absolutely right. You have to win some games, and having Johnson is going to make a significant difference between the Bears winning and losing. So, definitely. Well, Rashaba, I really appreciate your coming on tonight under these very, very difficult circumstances. These are the days in which especially the day after, when we go to work, it's no fun.
Yeah. We're kind of used to it by now, though, right? Like the first month of the season definitely hurt. Like after
it really does.
Especially the Chiefs game, I was like devastated after that. But after that, I've kind of just like given up hope on the season. So it doesn't really impact me as much anymore if the Bears lose. But it still sucks, obviously, to see us lose this much. Totally agree.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to, the day after, especially when you lose on a national television, late at night, and then you have to get up, again, the next day to go to work. And it's very, very difficult because I know there are some, maybe some colleagues who know that you're a Bears fan, and they want to pick a fight on you and try and, laugh at you and then just piss you off or something. So, I think you and I are both, unfortunately, have gotten used to it right now. This is what certainly what apathy does to a fan who has been very, very supportive through and through. And I just hope that the organization understands that the fans' apathy is real, and that they don't underestimate the fan base just because they show up both at home and on the road as well. And yesterday, being in LA, certainly a lot of Bears fans show up in droves, certainly, but for them to show up and then be treated to this kind of debacle certainly does not sit well, and probably leaves a real bad taste in their mouth as well. So we'll see where we go from here the next 9 weeks, and hopefully Justin Fields is ready to come back. Unfortunately, Matt Eberflus went on ESPN 1000 and already declared Tyson Bagent as a starter, which obviously did not sit well with many people. Obviously, drawing ire, and just maybe some theory that maybe they're just trying to push away Justin Fields and maybe try to trade him away tomorrow and make Bagent a starter for the rest of the year, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some craziness, that's happening on the Bears Twitter as well. So hopefully after tomorrow, when the trade season is over, we'll have a better clarity on where the Bears sit, and hopefully the Bears haven't traded away or stripped away a lot of their roster just like they did last year. So, all right, well, Rashad, but let's put a bow on this one. I appreciate you coming on, and if you know Rashad, you know his work from his YouTube channel, The Windy City Productions. If you don't know his work, you should definitely go look up The Windy City Production on YouTube and follow his content. It is a tremendous follow and tremendous video. I enjoy watching it, and I enjoy having him regularly to talk about the Bears. I'm on Twitter at Asian Sports Fan 1 on Twitter. I'm also an online contributor for the website beargoggleson.com, which is a part of the Fansided Network. Rashad, thanks for your time. Have a great evening, and hopefully we will talk again next week and discuss more about the Saints game and the trade deadline, and then see if the Bears made any moves and how we feel about it. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Have a good night.